Can't build a legacy on someone else's scraps, Vera. You just don't have the vision. Zane's voice was smooth, a practiced blend of pity and boardroom steel. The fluorescent lights of the arbitration room reflected off the sterile white table, bleaching the color from his face, leaving only the shape of his smugness. My lawyer, Ms. Ramirez, shifted in her chair, a silent question in her posture. I kept my eyes on Zane. Let's review the metadata, shall we? I met him at a tech mixer in Austin 5 years ago. He was the charisma, I was the code. He had a magnetic energy that drew people in, while I was more comfortable with the quiet logic of a well-structured algorithm. We sketched the entire business plan for our company, Viridian, on the back of a greasy napkin from a food truck called the Gilded Taco. It felt like destiny. Remember our first round of seed funding, celebrating with a bottle of cheap Prosecco on the dusty, unfinished concrete floor of our new office space, the city lights twinkling below us. We were going to change the world. The first red flag came a year later, a small tear in the fabric of our partnership. He gave an interview to TechCrunch, and when asked about our core algorithm, he called it a moment of solitary inspiration. He'd laughed it off when I confronted him. Just branding, we need a frontman. I believed him. The first 2 years were a blur of success. We hit 10,000 users and Zane took us to Uchi to celebrate. He handled the investors, the press, the pitches. I built the product, managed the dev team, and pulled the all-nighters. It seemed like a perfect symbiosis. But the balance began to shift so gradually I almost didn't notice. He was the face, I was the engine. He started expensing client dinners at Per Se on his trips to New York, while I was arguing with our server provider over a 3% price hike. He took the credit, and I took the work. I rationalized it. Every great partnership is imbalanced in some way, I told myself. This is just how it works. The ground fell away on a Tuesday afternoon. Zane was across town, wooing a potential new hire. I walked past his desk and his laptop was open, unlocked. A single notification banner hung at the top of the screen. It was a calendar invite from a rival venture capital firm. The subject line read, Project Nightingale's solo founder pitch. My blood went cold. Viridian was our project's codename, but Nightingale was my private name, stored in a personal document on my own drive for the next generation feature set I hadn't even shown him yet. The one I believed would make us untouchable. He hadn't just stolen our company. He had reached into my mind and stolen my future. That evening, I didn't confront him. I made him dinner. I listened to him talk about his day, and when he went to sleep, my investigation began. 14 weeks, my life split into two. By day, I was his partner. By night, I became a digital archaeologist, digging through the ruins of our trust. I installed a keylogger and screen recording software on his company machine, hardware I co-owned. I hired a digital forensics expert, a quiet man named Sterling, who helped me trace data packets. I discovered Zane had registered a shadow company in Delaware 3 months prior. Was systematically transferring our intellectual property, piece by piece, while simultaneously doctoring financial reports to make my R&D department look bloated and inefficient. He wasn't just leaving. He was building a case to have me thrown out with nothing. The breaking point came in our own conference room. Our lead investor, Ms. Yashida, sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Zane was at the front, clicking through a slide deck. He was so confident, so polished. The final slide was a new organizational chart. My name was gone. You've been a valuable contributor, Vera, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. But the company needs to evolve beyond its technical origins. Project Nightingale requires a singular vision, and frankly, your risk-averse approach is holding us back. This is for the best. The hum of the projector was the only sound. I felt the air crystallize around me. In that moment of profound, chilling clarity, the plan was born. I noticed a tiny detail on his slides, the font he'd used for his Project Nightingale mock-ups. It was a custom font I had commissioned and licensed specifically for Viridian. In his arrogance, in his haste to erase me, he had used my own tools to do it. It was a small, stupid mistake. It would be his undoing. The first person I called was a corporate attorney whose name I'd gotten from a mentor. Ms. Ramirez was sharp, precise, and wore zero tolerance like a tailored suit. Listened to my story for an hour without interruption, her fingers steepled. When I finished, she nodded once. Good, she said. You have records. Now we build the cage. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in controlled warfare. We spent over $45,000 of my savings on retainers and expert fees. We filed for arbitration, as stipulated in our partnership agreement. Ramirez had me file an initial claim based only on a minor breach of contract, a decoy. Zane's response, via his lawyers, was dismissive. He was walking into our trap with a swagger. The close call came when his legal team sent a discovery request for my recent communications. For a terrifying 48 hours, I thought he'd found me out. But Ramirez expertly carved out our preparation materials as privileged work product, handing over only the irrelevant scraps. Our cage was built from 7 pieces of undeniable proof. 1. Server logs showing a bulk download of our entire codebase to an IP address registered to his new company on April 17th at 2:13 a.m. 2. timestamped emails from his work account to his personal one, containing my exact phrasing for the Nightingale concept. 3. The transaction record from the company AMX, showing a $400 charge to a Delaware incorporation service. 4. The keylogger files, showing him typing out his plans to dilute my equity. 5. A sworn affidavit from a junior developer Zane had tried to poach, who confirmed Zane had claimed full credit for the Nightingale architecture. 6. An ironic gift from the universe. He'd named his company Zane Innovations LLC, but had forgotten to buy the domain. I bought Zane Innovations, com for $12 and redirected it to the official state webpage on corporate fraud statutes. And 7. The killer proof. The metadata from his solo founder pitch deck, showing the file was created on his new MacBook Pro just 2 weeks ago, despite his claims of working on it for a year. Document itself was a lie, and its digital signature was the witness. We are here to discuss the dissolution of a partnership, Ms. Ramirez said, her voice echoing slightly in the sterile arbitration room. Zane leaned back, looking bored. He launched into his practiced monologue about vision, creative differences, and the regrettable necessity of moving on. He was the visionary, I was the anchor holding him back. He was almost poetic. Ramirez let him finish. Then she began. First, the financial evidence. The misused credit card, the incorporation fee. Zane's lawyer looked annoyed, but not worried. They dismissed them as minor, justifiable expenses. Then Ramirez dimmed the lights and turned on the projector. A timeline appeared on the screen. On the left were the dates Zane claimed in his documents. On the right, the actual metadata creation stamps. The 2 columns were a stark visual representation of his fraud. A low murmur came from Zane's lawyer. But Ramirez wasn't finished. She clicked a file. A video began to play. It was a screen recording of Zane's desktop. I watched him drag my files, my work, into a new folder labeled Nightingale. We watched him rename them. We heard the soft, distinct clicks of his keyboard as the keylogger's text file scrolled on the screen, capturing him typing an email to his own lawyer. Need to manage her exit carefully. She's emotional. The color drained from Zane's face. The bravado, the practice charm, it all collapsed into a mask of pure panic. I started to stammer, something about doctored evidence about my vindictiveness. I finally looked at him, truly looked at him for the first time that day. It wasn't my vision you stole, Zane, it was my work. And you weren't smart enough to cover your tracks. The arbitrator's ruling was delivered in less than a week. It was swift, brutal, and total. Zane was found guilty of breach of fiduciary duty, intellectual property theft, and corporate fraud. Next 24 hours were a cyclone of activity. A call from a profusely apologetic Ms. Yashida, who immediately pledged her full support to me. An email from the editor of TechCrunch, the same publication that had once celebrated him, asking for a comment on a news story. Veridian co-founder ousted in corporate fraud ruling. The judgment awarded me 100% of the company's intellectual property and forced the dissolution of our partnership on my terms. Zane was ordered to pay $125,000 in damages, plus my legal fees. He lost everything. The investors blacklisted him. His name became a cautionary tale in the Austin tech scene. 6 months later, I saw him through the window of a generic coffee shop, hunched over a beat-up laptop. He was pitching a small web design job to a man in a cheap suit. The visionary was now a gig worker. I rebranded the company, secured a new round of funding, and moved us into a bright, airy office with a view of the river. The chaos was gone, replaced by a quiet, earned calm. My new head of product, a brilliant woman named Maya, asked me one afternoon what the secret to my success was. I looked out the window, at the city we had once dreamed of conquering together. It's about building a legacy on your own work. He was just a bug in the code, and I finally patched him out.